It's 5:01 p.m. Today is October 9th, 2023. We at the Brownsville PUB Annex Building. This is a scheduled regular meeting on October 9th, again, 2023. We have a confirmation on the quorum. We do. So the next item, let's please stand and pledge of allegiance for the United States flag and for our Texas flag, please. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and honor the Texas flag and pledge allegiance to many Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. Thank you. At this time, we'll recognize a moment of silence, please. Thank you. I would now move on to the consent agenda. We have 10 items on consent agenda. Is there any discussion on any of these items, or I will move for to entertain a motion to approve?
Move to
A
approve.
motion to approve by Mr. Sampaio.
I second that.
That is seconded. All those in favor of this motion to pass, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? This motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Nihil and Mr. Sampaio. We'll move on to to number 4, items for individual consideration. We're going to move with the general manager's report. Let me make a note, Marilyn, on item number 8A, I'm sorry, under general manager report, item A, Brownsville broadband update, City of Brownsville, and item G, BTX fiber project installation repairs, Jaime Estrada. Those 2 items, we are going to pull them. We're not going to discuss them.
Yes, we have a subcommittee meeting that we have on the 16th, and so at the subcommittee, we can go into all the details. We also have all of the BTX fiber repairs presentation ready to go. So at that time, is go ahead and consolidate, and then we'll come back at the November meeting, so that way it's a more up-to-date versus coming and do the 2. And the city manager has been informed that we were going to move it onto the subcommittee meeting of the 16th, which is on Monday.
Well, I think that's a good move. So the next item, Ms. Gilbert?
Yes.
Board calendar?
On the board calendar, if you go to item 1B, you'll have all the monthly scheduled meetings. You'll have the SRWA board meetings, the PUB board meetings, and the PubCap meetings. We do have a lot of other events that are occurring on here, and you'll see that on October the 18th to the 21st, the mayor will be attending the mayor's council, and we also have some other meetings with the congressional staff. We also have, just to, an invitation for you, all of you, for those of you who want to attend a veterans breakfast, we do have that on November the 9th, and that is for our PUB staff, and we typically invite our board members if they'd like to attend. In addition, we have our annual PN, and so we announced the safety metrics that we have for the year. And in addition, that's also, thanking for the years of service and for Thanksgiving as well. So that's on November the 16th, and board members are invited to attend. There's other meetings that I'm not going to go into all the details, just let me know, and we can go ahead and work through some of those details there. November meetings, we have holidays, November the 10th, the Veterans Day, and then November the 23rd to 24th. For those of you watching, that's our Thanksgiving holiday. Christmas 25th and the 26th is the PUB floating holiday that the offices will also be closed. Any questions on calendar?
No questions on the calendar. We'll move on to financial report.
Yes. The next 3 items are financial report, engineering and legal fees, monthly expenses, and also the capital work orders will be presented by Ms. Monica Cavazos, and so Director of Finance, and she will, just go through item C to help everybody who's on board.
August, financial calendar, August 31st, 2023. We look at the far right-hand column. Be looking at the far right-hand column, the year-to-date numbers. You'll see that we generated total operating revenues of $796,003. We had operating expenses of $194,146,120, which left us operating income of $40,649,883. We then back out our net non-operating expenses of $48,591,744, which leaves us income before capital contributions of a negative $7,941,861. We add our capital contributions of $4,049,049, which gives us a change in net position of a negative $3,624,812. When added to the net position at the beginning of the year of $445,310,943, we have a net position at the end of the period of $441,686,131. Moving on to the flow of funds, you see on line 20 that we've generated sufficient revenues to give us a balance available for transfers out year to date of $30,258,274. This covered our operating sub-account for the fuel adjustment of $2,136,244. Improvement fund for CIP funding of $8,166,047. Improvement fund for Resaca CIP funding from the Resaca fee of $329,808 for total transfers of $10,632,99, with improvement fund surplus year to date of $19,626,175. Are there any questions on the financials?
Any questions or comments from any of the board members? Okay, Monica, let's move on to the City of Brownsville Capital Work Order Report.
The first up is the engineering fees. You'll see that we had a total budget for engineering fees of $3,205,714. Our year-to-date spending is $2,287,667 as of the end of August, which leaves a budget balance available of $918,047. Moving on to the legal fees, we have a budget of $1,860,474. Year-to-date actuals of $967,117, which leaves a budget balance as of the end of August of $893,357. And then my last item is the capital work orders to the city and the city transfers. You see in the middle section of the document that we have billed services this year to the city of Brownsville of $18,108.73. And then the bottom table shows you the transfers to the city. It shows by utility what their usage is, what the cash transfer was, and the total transfer. So their usage year to date is $5,538,306. The cash transfer as of August is $9,814,666 for a total transfer of $15,352,972 to the city of Brownsville. Are there any questions on any of those reports?
You have no questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on with procurement summary.
Next, we have Diane Sala to summary.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. This is the General Manager's Procurement Authorization Form for the third quarter, July through September 2023. The total amount for water and wastewater and administration is $588,727.59. And for electric, $587,792.79 for a grand total amount of $1,176,520.38. The majority of them were actually competitively bid or on a state contract or sole source, or if we had to amend a contract, a current contract. Do you have any questions?
Donna, how long have you all been using this form and presented it to the board?
I believe it's been since like 2013, 2014.
Okay. Anything else? Any other comments about this item?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We are skipping the next item on the BTX fiber project installation and moving on to the drought update. I just wanted to announce that we're still in a drought. We haven't changed, although it rains a lot and it has been raining here. It's not over the watershed. As of September 30th, according to the statistics then, we had a 21.4 of normal conservation capacity. We have had some rains, but not enough for it to go. We are having a public service announcement that the mayor and I are scheduled for tomorrow, so we can also help with the conservation efforts. I also emailed you, board members, all of the various different activities that we've done with the conservation, and if there's any other questions, we'll move on. We'll have a more detailed presentation at this next meeting where we're at and announcements if we're moving on to any of restrictions. They're listening. We do have all of our stage 2 water shortages alerts and all the various different water use restrictions that are voluntary at this time on the PEB website. And then we also have all the full drought contingency plan there as well. And with that, that concludes, unless there's any other questions or items for general manager's reports for the next meeting, I'll be happy to address and bring forth.
Any questions or concerns for the CEO? All right, well, keep moving the meeting forward. We have any public comments signed up?
No public comment.
No public comments? Okay, we'll move on to the continuation of items for individual consideration. Item number 2, consideration of possible approval for the water and electric installation service contract for AMI project by Allegiant Utilities Inc. So you wanted to present on this item?
Yes, sir. Chairman, members of the board.
I do want to say right now that the presentation that is going to be presented, it covers item numbers 2 through 5. And so maybe we may want to read them. And of course, individually, we take action on each one of them. But I think it would, in order to save time, it might be better to do it all at this time and read each one of the items. So I'll read them for you, Mr. Chair. Number 3 is consideration and approval for the water meter purchase and software contract for the AMI project by Badger Meter, Inc. And number 4 is consideration and approval for the electric meter and network equipment purchase and software contract for the AMI project by Landis & Gear Technology, Inc. And number 5 is consideration and approval for the software as a service subscription agreement for the AMI project by N. Harris Computer Corporation.
You're saying that the presentation involves the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items?
Yes, and then
4 items.
we can then vote on them individually. So if that's okay with the board, we can just go through the presentations because it flows a little bit better. There are various different contracts that are intertwined because they're addressing both the water side of the business and the electrical side of the business, and also various different meter contractings and that legal. And if it's just easier, I think, to be able to move around. And then at that point, we will then vote on each one of them individually.
I'm okay with it. Okay.
Council, do we need a motion to open up the floor for all of the items at this time, or we're good with this?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Eddie Hernandez. I'm the Director of Enterprise Solutions for PUB. And with me today is Ms. Nicole Nason and Mr. John Mitchell from eSource Consulting. My vendor contracting overview. So this is an overview of the various contracts that are on the agenda. Clicker.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. My name is Nicole Nassan. I'm Senior Vice President with eSource. And as Mr. Hernandez mentioned, here with me today is Mr. John Mitchell, Senior Consultant with eSource. And on the phone, we also have our project manager for this project. His name is Mr. Jason Javac. And to give you a little background here today, we've been working with staff as well as the recommended vendors for this AMI project since January of this year. to develop the scopes of work as well as the respective performance, acceptance, and payment criteria included in each vendor contract for your consideration today. A little bit of background about eSource and our role. eSource was founded in 1986. And since that time, over 500 water, electric, and gas utilities across the US and Canada. Specific to our AMI practice area, which I oversee, our team has worked with over 200 utilities, again, across water, electric, and gas in the municipal space through elements of the assessment, procurement, and deployment of AMI technology. We are 100% vendor neutral. We don't have any affiliations with any manufacturer, any software company. However, we do advise and we provide project management support through the deployment of an AMI project. We support our clients through the procurement and vendor contracting phase, and also wanted to be specific that we do not actually provide any scoring or selection ourselves, but we help to advise and organize our clients to help them through the process because of the different facets of this type of a project. So ultimately, our role is to bridge the gap. That's how we basically work with our client, that what the vendors are doing is aligning with what the utility understands. And we try to bridge that gap of knowledge and help keep things moving forward. So we currently our scope of work currently to assist the PUB staff is across these 11 task areas. And yes, I will not go through each one of them individually. However, I would like to give you a sense of what we have done thus far as we've been working with the city since, with Brownsville since January of this year. So what we've been able to accomplish thus far is we are nearly wrapped up with the tasks and deliverables for the vendor contracting negotiations. We've established the project management and communications framework for this project. As these vendors will eventually enter this, we've been able to set the framework. We've produced as-is and to-be systems integration design. We're actively working on the test strategy with PUB staff. We've documented current state and conceptual processes associated with this technology. We've also been able to meet with many PUB staff to review and assess the OCM change management and produce those deliverables. And lastly, what we've been able to accomplish thus far with our contract is actively supporting you all through the customer engagement plan and that customer communications. And please stop me if you have any questions. What is AMI? Simply put, AMI is not just a metering project. It does start with a meter, and that meter has the ability to communicate with it and transmit data via an endpoint device over a communications network. Data, that includes meter reads, it includes alerts, communications, alarms. It's collected into a head-end system, it's a piece of software. That data is then passed over to a meter data management system, which will then collect that information and it acts as a hub, a data hub for other systems to pull data from. The meter data management system will send billing reads to the billing system, and it will also interface with other business critical systems such as the outage management system and the customer engagement portal. So all this data comes into a software system, and then it is then pushed out to other systems as they request it. And from back in the beginning, as PUB was looking at this technology, what we wanted to do is ensure that it aligns with the strategic plan. Use of the technology and the data that is produced by the AMI system directly ties to the vision and the goals of the PUB. It will enable PUB to proactively identify and respond to issues and empower customers to get near real-time data and be able to make decisions with that information. Key benefits that oftentimes are stated, especially with a water and combo electric utility: proactive water leak detection and notification. Customer doesn't have to wait to be told. You don't have to wait to know your customer has a leak. Similarly, on the electric side, you have proactive outage detection, notification, and restoration. It helps with the customer relationship. It also helps the PUB with cost savings, operational efficiencies, and again, enhancing the customer experience. Last thing I'll touch on is the timeline, a quick review of the timeline where we've been, and then I'm going to pass it on to Mr. John Mitchell here, who's going to go in a little bit more detail about the scope of each one of these contracts, as well as the contract themselves. So back in August of 2022, staff had completed the evaluation process, selecting Landis & Gyr as the preferred vendor for board consideration. That was followed by a meeting here with the board approval in September 2022, approved the AMI budget and authorization to proceed with negotiations. Then in January of 2023, negotiations were initiated with the 4 vendors in question. And now we're at a stage where from here, right now we're estimated to have a kickoff in January 2024. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it here to John. He'll go into the details of the contracts.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. So this slide is to just give everyone on the board a sense of the scope. I know everyone's aware there are 4 different vendors who are going to be a part of this AMI project. The first one is Landis & Gyr, who is going to be providing the electric network, as well as the meters in order to read those through AMI. Badger is providing the water side of the solution. So they have a cellular system where all of their meters will speak directly to PUV systems. SmartWorks is providing that meter data management system, again, that middleware that collects all the data, acts as a repository. And then Allegiant is going to be performing meter installation services so that they can deploy all of the meters that will be provided by Land and by Badger. So as part of how this project is phased in, we have designed what's called an initial deployment area. So prior to doing a mass meter change out where we're touching all the customers, we really want to have a focused area that we're looking at and testing so we can make sure that all of the integrations are in place, making sure that there's continuity in the meter to cash process and making sure things are billing correctly before we deploy at scale. So we have about 2,800 electric meters that we've looked at, about 2,400 water meters that we've looked at, and we would deploy those first in the first phase, as well as a limited number of network collector devices, test that, make sure it's operating properly. That would need to be approved by Brownsville PUB. And after that's approved, then you could move on into full deployment. But again, we want to make sure that all the systems are in place before PUB has to commit an extraordinary amount of money to deploy all of this equipment.
One thing I would point out on the map, it doesn't show up real well, but the downtown area is part of this initial deployment area. Levy, Elizabeth, Washington, Adams, Jefferson. So that area is also covered there.
Yeah, we
Is that East and West Levy or just East Levy?
East.
Okay.
And we deliberately sort of chose this to have problem areas, right? Or areas where we expect some sort of geographic or topographic kind of issues may arise or give challenges to the network. Again, we want to really stress test this thing before we deploy at scale. So as far as the contracting and negotiations process is concerned, as Nicole mentioned, we began this contracting process in January of 2023. At that time, we had initially support that was provided by DTRG. They phased out and Spencer Fane moved in. And we really had a 2-pronged approach to how we did this contracting. So Spencer Fane really handled the legal aspect of things. eSource on our side, we worked with PUB staff and with the vendors to look over the scopes of work, had many hours of meetings going through those scopes of work, and the agreements that are up for consideration today. There are about 22 separate documents that comprise those 4 different agreements. You can see a list of what some of those are here: general services contract, master services agreements, statements of work. And we really went through each of those different documents to produce what you have in front of you today. Just want to point out, these are obviously very important contracts. This is going to totally change how you're reading meters, which is core function. And you'll be in these relationships for 10, 15, 20 years. So we really took a fine tooth comb to these over the past 10 or so months. So as far as how these contracts are laid out, there's a diagram up here. I just want to point out a few things. So all of the red blocks that you see, those are implementation contracts that PUB would be signing. So that covers the initial implementation and deployment of the system, standing up all of the software and actually ordering all of those meters. The orange blocks that you see on the right-hand side there, those are ongoing agreements. Those will include things like SaaS, hosting, ongoing support, maintenance. And each of those contracts points to a specific document, which is what we've called the performance acceptance criteria. I'll get into that later, but it's a document that is common and shared throughout all of those different contracts to ensure continuity. Additionally, all of these different agreements have supplementary conditions that were provided by Spencer Fane and by PUB to ensure compliance with Brownsville's preferred terms and conditions.
I think Daisy had a question. I saw something flash up there.
Dr. Tomoto, do you have a question at this time? You're on mute.
I think the question was in line to about why are we using 4 different vendors? From what I saw flash up.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize that you did not have access to the chat. My question is why 4 different vendors? It would seem like a lot of the work here is is going to be about being able to integrate 4 different vendors, and is that why was that decision made as opposed to a single vendor that can both give us all the products as well as the installation?
I can answer that a little bit. There were choices. Actually, the 2 finalists, if you all remember, one was Aclara and then one was Landis & Gyr that brought this solution to the table. In the other vendor's solution, they provided everything. They provided the meters, they provided the software. It was like an all-in-one solution. The other choice is to kind of go the path that we took, which is best of breed. Best of breed is when you try to choose the best solution for each item. So we tried to choose the best solution for electric, and then for water, and for software, and so on. So it is a little bit more in that respect, but by the same token, the pro in going with best of breed is that you feel that you have the strongest vendor in each category versus somebody who is a very good vendor, but isn't providing everything, and then you're dependent on that one vendor for everything.
Eddie, do we already have a relationship with any of these vendors?
I know we have purchased Landis & Gyr meters in the past, along with Itron and other meters on the electric side. Badger meters, we have been purchasing Badger meters for probably about 10, 15 years. Longer than 10 or 15 years. In fact, I think you just approved the annual purchase for this coming year, and they're Badger meters. So it's something that the water department.
Presented to the board, there was a reference that some of these have been in a relationship with PUB, and that would streamline the process moving forward. But Dr. Tomoto had a concern about why there was 4. That's been answered. We have 4 vendors moving forward. There's 4 contracts presenting to the board. I think one of the comments I have is I'm going to be very focused with administration, staying close to these contracts from the startup date, January 2024, very close to the timeline. This board member, we have to have a lot of accountability on this project moving forward, on invoices being paid, on supporting document for invoices being paid. It's like John said, it's a $30 million project. I'm going to backtrack a little bit and talk about the water meters. Water meters 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the need to perhaps retrofit the water meters. And that was going to cost some additional expense. I've spoken to Ms. Gilbert. We need to really hold the line on that. The budget for this project is $30.2 million. And I think we need to stay with that $30.2 million all the way through this project. And we're trusting that our legal counsel has gone through these contracts. We're trusting that these contracts are fair and they are protect the utility. It's and what a contract is and how a contract is put together to protect the utility and to protect the vendor. We've been discussing this project now for almost 2 years. eSource started. eSource is back. We're trying to understand their role. And we need to be really careful. This board needs to be really careful. If we need to hold everybody accountable to the work that's about to start in January. But those are some of the things that, and I had a meeting earlier today, and we've been reading this material. Who sent the contracts out? There's about 500 pages. Well, contracts have been sent out, but Spencer Fain has reviewed all the contracts. All the contracts, y'all have reviewed them. Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry, I need to make those comments. I know Dr. Zamora still has concerns, or did you answer her questions about the 4 different vendors?
I think I answered. I was finished with the answer. I don't know if she has anything she wants to add.
Eddie, I'll add one other thing that you mentioned, I believe, a year ago, which is a lot of the stuff with the other vendor would have been proprietary, if I remember correctly, and you would have had to use their software and their products to, continue to extract data from the AMI meters. If you remember.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all one vendor.
Yeah. Yeah, that was another reason we decided to go the other direction. But okay, thanks.
So it would have not been more cost effective to use a single vendor. Is that what you're saying?
No, when we looked at the contracts, if I remember correctly, the total for the Landis and Gear solution was 29.7 million, and the total for the Aclara solution was 31.2, in that range. So it was actually a little more expensive.
The
Okay.
30.2 is the budgeted amounts. We did an upgrade and this was discussed at the committee, 500,000. However, in talking to Mike, we have, Mike, a slide that's going to go over the overall project and the cost, I believe, when we further get down to another slide.
Yeah, I can chime in at that point, or I can make that clarification right now. I know, Mr. Rendon, you did mention that the contract was $30.2 million. The actual contract, the correction that we need to make, the actual contract that was approved back in September of 2022 was for $29,711,655. And the reason for the difference here is during the contract negotiations, our electrical staff went ahead and requested an upgrade to the electric meters with an additional cost of $530,000. We inadvertently, or staff inadvertently, included that on top of contract amount of the 29.7 rather than reducing it from contingency. So we're making that correction now. The contract that was approved by the board was at 29.7 million.
Okay.
So we're going to be reducing a contingency by $500,000.
Appreciate that clarification. Moving forward. Thank you. And Eddie, I'm sorry. I know you were answering Dr. somewhat of the question. Let's move on.
Sure.
Right, so moving on, I'm glad that accountability was brought up because that kind of ties into this performance acceptance and payment criteria that I referenced previously. So this is a document that is common throughout all 4 of the contracts that have been brought up to you. Essentially what we've done, as I've mentioned, this project is broken down into separate phases. We have a planning phase. We have a design build test phase, which includes that initial deployment area. full deployment of the project. And so what we have done in order to kind of tie the fates of all these different vendors together is we've outlined a list of criteria for each of those phases that needs to be completed by that vendor before they can move on to the next phase. One of the things that's key to this is there's a RACI matrix in this document, which outlines for each vendor, for each milestone, are you responsible? Are you contributing? Or do you need to be informed of the activities that are going on? And these can, range the gamut, but it's a number of different activities that need to be delivered in order to fulfill the project in a robust manner. So this is an example table that we pulled from that document. And you can see there are some percentages that are also listed on some of these milestones. Those percentages, payment percentages. So in order for a vendor to be paid for services rendered, they need to have delivered on that criteria. In Brownsville, there's a mechanism in this document where Brownsville will approve those criteria and then limit payment for those services rendered.
John, you will be coordinating this with Mr. Hernandez? eSource will be coordinating this effort?
Correct. Yes. So again, this is a very important document in all of these contracts. We want to avoid crosstalk. We want to avoid finger pointing, and we want to make sure that they're accountable to what they have promised to deliver to us. So these next set of slides just provides a general overview of each of the contracts and each of the vendors. So as far as scope here for Landis & Gyr, they're providing 55,000 electric meters, as well as a number of network gateway routers. So that's the net that will deliver the reads to Brownsville. That will be collected through their head-end software, which is called Command Center. And as part of their scope as well, there are a number of software integrations that they'll need to perform with the billing system, with the outage management system, and with the meter data management system. And of course, they'll be providing training, testing, and overall program management for the deployment of this system. As far as fees are concerned, their contract is about $6.7 million total in capital. Their O&M is about $6,000 monthly. It's a 15-year term with 3-year renewal terms. They have committed to meeting service level agreements, quite high service level agreements. So they will guarantee network availability as well as delivery of reads, 98+% on a daily basis of hourly interval reads. As I say, integrations include OMS, which is a very big Brownsville. And it was previously mentioned that there was a meter upgrade that also got put into this contract so that we can measure reactivity.
Is there skipping? Okay, we're skipping the legal slides.
So the next contract is Badger. They'll be providing about 18,000 new water meters and about 40,000 registers that will retrofit onto the existing meters so that they can be compatible with the endpoints that they will also be providing. And those endpoints are basically cellular devices that will communicate the read that's on that register up to their head-end software, which is Beacon. And just like Landis & Gyr, they also have software integrations that they'll need to be performing, as well as professional services related to training, testing, and management. So Badger's total contract amount is $11.1 million, 37,000 monthly fees for O&M that's related to the cellular service, as well as their SaaS fees. It's a 10-year initial term and negotiable renewal terms. A key takeaway here that's more a legal item related to damages, so I'll kind of gloss over that for now. But a key item to note here is that the Badger contract is expected to be funded in part by a WaterSmart grant that was previously awarded to Brownsville by the Bureau of Reclamation because this project would support drought efforts and conservation efforts. There is a Buy America provision in WaterSmart that says that any equipment needs to be manufactured in America. Water meters are not really purchased in America, so we need to apply for a waiver to that specific provision. Those waivers have other projects in the country, and we're currently in the process of developing that. So
I would like to point out that the Water Smart grant was for $5 million and that eSource worked with the PUB grant team to acquire that grant.
Let me ask Mike something. Mike, will you have someone from your office specifically to monitor this project?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Will someone from your office be monitoring this project specifically, just this project in terms of payments and?
Yeah, we'll be keeping track of all the payments and we don't exceed the contract amount.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
thank you. Again, I'll skip over these legal items. The next contract, Harris, who's providing the meter data management system. There are a number of different modules that are a part of that system. They're listed up here, but they'll help do things like outs, remote disconnects on the electric side, as well as provide general analytics and business intelligence tools for staff. This software will integrate into the head-end platforms for both Landis and Gear and Badger, as well as to the billing system, Kayenta. And they will similarly be providing professional services related to training, testing, and management. So as far as fees are concerned, there are, the capital is $370,000 upfront to stand the software up and conduct all those professional services. And then there's annual O&M fees of around $198,000. And this is a 5-year initial term with 1-year renewal terms. Some key takeaways here related to Harris. Harris is currently providing Kayenta, that CIS system, and they will also be providing your customer portal. So they've done these integrations in the past. They're relatively, so that mitigates a lot of risk on that end. As well, PUB has done a lot of work on meter configurations, understanding what data needs to be passed over to the MDMS. And so we've already done right sizing on the system. So we're mitigating a lot of risk related to the need for any change orders or anything like that in the future. Knock on wood, indeed. And then finally, Allegiant. So Allegiant is providing installation services for this project. That includes the water meter exchanges, as well as retrofitting those registers, conducting electric meter exchanges. They will also be standing up the electric RF network for the Landis and Gear system. They'll be providing as well other ancillary services related to new meter testing, making sure that the meters that come in are up to spec, reclaiming the old electric meters, and they'll also be providing warehousing, inventorying of the meters that come in. As far as fees are concerned, this is all capital, so 5.8 million, and their contract ends after implementation. Key takeaways, there are several provisions that Allegiant needs to provide by related to wage. PUB has a living wage policy as well, since this would be funded by a Water Smart grant, which is a federal grant. They'd be abiding by prevailing wage under Davis-Bacon. And the scope of work that we have outlined with Allegiant includes a number of items ancillary to just pure installation. So they'll be providing quality control and assurance. They'll be taking photos at every meter site, both before and after, and doing verification on all the data and all of the serial numbers that get installed. There is some additional box work that we may need to perform that would eat into the contingency. So that'd be on top of that 5.8 million. There anything we need to relate to that, Eddie?
Now, the only other thing that we had there was the use of, well, as far as we are looking at some different solutions regarding the meter box issue. We met with staff today and that number was lowered a bit. There was a miscommunication of how they thought the meters were going to be installed versus how they are going to be installed. We clarified that, so their estimates came down a little bit. which is good. But we also have some other ways that we intend to address the issue. We're going to be performing a field survey to actually measure the depth, the clearance height. That's the main issue, is can we put the radio in with the water meter and, so that they clear. So we're going to be doing a survey. We'll have the meter readers do. Then we're also getting in touch with Allegiant to, once we finish the survey and we have the fails, then Allegiant, what we want is Allegiant to come in and take a look at those specifically. Okay, how bad is it? Is this something that you can remediate? Because in their contract, they are supposed to go in there and clean the meter out to some degree. Now, if it's just a physical that it's too low, then they won't be able to address that. But we're going to try to get them in here to take a look at that so we can get a better number on that. And then the other thing that we can do is look at some ultrasonic meters, which are smaller meters. They're newer meters that are a little more expensive. We didn't go with that because they're more expensive, but in a tight fit, we might be able to use those meters. We'd have to evaluate whether it's cheaper to move the box or buy that meter. So it just would depend on the numbers. And the last thing is there will be some meters that we have to skip. I was walking through Brownsville Country Club the other day, and since there was a driveway, normal 2-car driveway, they had expanded a third lane. Unfortunately, right in the middle of that third lane is our meter. So that's encased in concrete now. So there are things like that we might not be able to remediate. And so there may be some meters that we just have to skip because there's no way to fit the thing in there without breaking concrete or something like that. Again, those are situations that are beyond the project's control. Now, for other meters that we may have issue with, we met with the water meter shop and meter reading today, again, to refine the numbers a little bit. And one of the things that we did point out was that if we did have a larger number of meters that we had issue with, we could skip them. And then we could do a long-term maintenance project. I asked them, well, what are you thinking? They said, well, maybe 5 years. And we remediate the issue. PUB staff would remediate the issue. We break it up into a 5-year plan, remediate it. Once it's remediated, then we install the meter and you go next to the system and you're done. So there are different ways that we can address the issue.
I have a question on why Badger is not doing basically the scope of work of Allegiant. If it's basically are they doing, why is the big difference of 5.8 million to Allegiant to Badger having 11.1 million? If they're doing basically the same thing on basically changing the water meters.
Well, Badger's a supply-only contract.
Okay.
So they're providing all the hardware and the software. Allegiant's the one that are going out into the field, provisioning those meters and
Okay,
things like that.
sorry, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So Badger and Landis& Gyr will be providing, well, actually, we will purchase the meters from them and Allegiant will be doing the installation.
Thank you.
It might be helpful for next time just to have a flow chart. Yeah, we have a bunch of different vendors and just so we demarcate every single person's, responsibility. So yeah, thank you.
I have a quick question. What's the plan for the old meters that are going to be removed?
On the electric side, we will bring them in and our teams will dispose of them. On the water side, we're actually going to keep a lot of those meters. And what we're going to, you have the meter base, and then on top is a black register. And that's what the meter reader, the register. Okay. The old registers, we're going to keep the meter. We're going to take the old register, dispose of it, put a new register and a new radio and connect the radio to the register. So the old equipment will be brought back into PUB and disposed of by PUB.
Okay. So we've been presented with how many items for?
Right, so at this time, if there's not any questions, go ahead and open up each one of the recommendations individually and read the recommendation for item number 2.
Okay, any other comments or any further discussion?
Just a quick question on the project schedule. Is that the project schedule that is in the presentation? Is that still correct? I mean, is this not covering contracting? So we're done with contracting. It shows it being done in September 23rd. So that's done.
Correct.
Design, development, build, all that starts.
Yeah, we're not about a month off.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, contracting has finished. I mean, this would be the last step. And then, yeah, if we're approved, then we would begin the planning for that design build test phase.
Great.
And
And the
then-
initial deployment area is still scheduled for Q2 of 24.
Yes.
Now they're on for January. All right. Maryland's been a lot of information.
Can we go through the capital budget by vendor slide? That's in my packet, but it was skipped here.
Yeah, so this slide shows the capital budget by vendor. So the vendors are on the far left-hand side. The upfront capital for each of those is in the next column. And then we've chosen to capitalize the O&M expenses for their maintenance contracts for the next 3 years as part of this budget. And so on the far right-hand side, you can see the total of those for each of the contracts.
But the items tonight are only for the first floor and for the CapEx, correct? None of the capitalized topics.
Correct. Lamson, Deer, Badger, Allegiant, SmartWorks for the total CapEx.
Yeah.
Is eSource currently a consultant for any of these vendors?
No.
What was the question?
Is eSource a consultant for any of these vendors? The answer was no.
And what is eSource, I guess, really like liable for? Like what can you guarantee us that, would be done? And that might be a question that falls better under the project schedule. The next slide.
Nicole?
What is the question?
I would say that eSource has helped negotiate the contracts as far as the items that
No,
are.
but like, once the project gets started, like for example, like what are you really liable for once the project gets started?
Do you want to come up?
Yeah, and we could also go back to the earlier slide that we talked through the actual tasks we're performing. I would say we're here to help you through this. We're here to help to identify in any case
So
and
advising, you're here to advise.
advise and also conduct the project management.
Okay, so under project management, right? What are you, like, what are you liable for really? Like, what are you really in charge of? Like, not advising, but that you will make sure that what?
Like they develop the deliverables and the schedules of payment. And then once, then they would,
Protocols, developing protocols, okay.
right, then they would go through the invoices and make sure that all the deliverables have been met and that the invoices is ready for payment.
So, and if they're not met,
That,
then you're
you know,
liable
all
for that.
the-
If the conditions are not met and you tell us that they were met, then you're liable for that. Is that right?
I think so, yeah. And let me just explain, in terms of everything in the slide that's up right now on the deliverable side, we are responsible for producing, along with coordinating with PUB staff, everything you see here, as well as our scope of work. We have a very detailed scope of work that talks about our process, how we approach a project like this, as well as what we do to produce these deliverables with the staff. So if that would it be helpful for us to provide that specific detail?
No, I want more, more general, like a more general understanding of
Like
what
on our,
will be done.
okay, like on our side, when we're going through some of this stuff, like change management or doing new processes, those are things that PUB doesn't necessarily have the expertise in. So they come in and they help that. So they're working with our teams directly on those issues. As far as the vendors are concerned, they would help develop the criteria by which the vendor gets paid. And then they would review the invoices and the scope of work with me And then we would sit down and go, okay, did they do A? Did they do B? Did they do C? Did they complete everything that they needed to complete? And then once we've both determined that, yes, they have, then PUB would issue payment. So they help walk us through those things because they're the expert in that area more so than we are.
And is it boots on the ground, making sure that the vendors are following protocols?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, we're going to be, Mr. Jason Javak, who's on the call right now as well. He's the project manager and he's been assigned to this project now for the past, I believe, 10 months or so, as we've gone through the vendor contract negotiations. And in many areas, we've already been on site and met with PUB staff a good example would be Task 7 business process design. We've helped to document the current state processes as they exist today that are going to change once AMI is implemented. We've also helped to document the conceptual future state of how those processes will change and each different division or operating group in PUB that will be impacted. So we've had several workshops. I'd be happy to send a list over of all the workshops that we've held so far with PUB staff. It also spans testing support. We've started work on the test strategy to be able to outline how exactly are you going to test the solution and specifically PUB staff to test and our assistants to do that. And there's a couple of other areas I could go into, but if I'm hoping I'm answering your question as to what
this
are
is useful. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Nicole, just, I'm thinking about the last time we met and the original, the fee for your consultation. And I understand that you are just consulting, you're not in the field as the four vendors, you're not supplying any hardware.
Correct.
You're not installing anything.
Correct.
You're providing some expertise consultation with Eddie Hernandez to make sure this project flows. And we discussed, I was very adamant about this. It's a very expensive consultation. And even though we negotiated some to reduce the fee. So I just hope everything moves forward in step. And y'all are going to be there providing consultation or working with Eddie and making sure all these different aspects of the project are completed. And then appropriate payment is paid for work that has been performed.
So I mean, my understanding is that, we
Dr.
are
Zamora?
seeking, yes, my understanding is that we're seeking, this expert consultation so that we are not faced with, maybe 9 months from now with, for some reason, we need an extra $3 million for this project, right? I mean, I would think that this is part of why we're investing upfront in the planning and having all this in order I'm understanding that we would not have to worry about that because we have resource on board. Would that be accurate?
I would say so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and a large part of it, just to jump in real quick, in my experience, I've implemented a lot of the systems here at PUB, the financial system, the customer information system, the geographic information system, our radio system, and probably a couple of others to do that successfully. And a large part of that is a planning. What I see in a lot of other utilities and a lot of other companies in general, you buy something and you think it's a magic bullet. And it's like a lot of things, it sits on a shelf. Nobody knows how to use it. So one of the main things, because I know it kind of sounds touchy-feely, but when we look at the organizational change management or the business process design, that's critical. Without that, this project fails. Because one of the things that you're doing is you're changing the entire way you do business. We're going to change at every aspect, we change everything. Because right now, we're reactive. I need you to call me and tell me that you don't have power or that you have a problem with your water to do something. From this point forward, it reverses that completely. Now, we should know that you don't have power or that there's potentially an issue with your water, and we would communicate that. But it also changes how we do that. And when we started doing the business process design, important that we jumped in. We had about 30 staff members involved in that. And we pulled everybody into the room and we walked through different processes with billing, collections, customer service, the meter shops on, okay, this is how it changes. And that's really important because what we're trying to do is get ahead of it. So when the system comes in, they've already kind of learned the basics and we've already designed the process. So they already have an idea of, okay, this is how it's going to work, rather than here you go, here's a new system, goodbye. And then nobody knows what to do. So it is critically important. And that's a lot of the expertise that they bring from the 300 other projects that they've done.
And just to clarify, that contract is already approved, correct?
Oh, yes, sir.
So the only 4 contracts we're looking at tonight are
The ones-
Landis & Gear, Badger, Allegiant.
Correct.
SmartWorks,
Correct.
which is about 80% of the total.
Correct.
And with the exception of Landis & Gear, they're all at budget, and Landis & Gear is an additional 500 on the recommendation of our team, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct. So this is where that total price of 30.2 million will go down to 29.7 and reduces the contingency down to 2 million.
All right.
Thank you. All my questions have been answered.
Oh, Ms. Gilbert. Okay, we're ready. We're going to go ahead and take one item at a time. Administration, I could read them out. What's the first one?
Allegiant.
So yes,
We
the
have a
first
region-
contract.
We have with no further comment or discussion. We have a recommendation by staff to approve the contract with Allegiant Utility Services, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $5,685,465.82. Do we want to discuss this item further? Or do we have a motion to approve it?
I move to approve.
I second.
Okay, we have it approved by Dr. Holman and second by Mr. Sampaio. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
those against? Motion passes. The next one is the Badger. The Badger contract. Brownsville PV staff recommends board approval for the contract with Badger Meter, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $11,222,766.05. Do we have a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Mr. Sampaio has a motion.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Dr. Holman. All those in favor of approving item number 3, say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Motion passes unanimously. The next item that we're looking at is PUB staff recommends board approval for the contract with Landis Giant Technology, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $6,902,45.20. All those in favor, say aye.
I'll move.
Sorry, we have a motion by Mr. Sampaio, a second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Nahida. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those against? Did I hear an against? Motion passes. Next item is the Harris Agreement, Brownsville PUB. Staff recommends board approval for the contract within Harris Computer Corporation in the amount not to exceed $370,750. All those in favor? Or should I?
No.
I'll move.
A motion by Mr. Sampaio,
I'll second.
by Dr. Holman. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those against? This motion passes. Okay. So, Mr. Hernandez, that completes Joe's presentation on this AMI. Ms. Gilbert, anything else from administration on this item?
No, not at this time, but we will be bringing periodic updates to the Program and Facilities Committee. And so with that, we'll bring copies of, well, actually status reports on meters ordering. We do have long lead items on some of it. So if there's any other delays that we can't foresee based on the manufacturer, we'll let everybody know what's going on. This is a multi-year contract. So for everybody aware, we're not going to get OMS going right away or AMI on it. So we have some time on here.
Okay, so that completes the presentation from Mr. Hernandez and eSource. We appreciate eSource's presentation here for this item and for
Thank you very much.
and answering
Thank you.
all the questions and concerns. Thank you. The next item is Gilbert. Let's go over to item number 6. Consideration and possible action to the city of Brownsville for utility improvement for CIP 490323. Reconstruction of street pavement and drainage improvements for CIP number 2. Ms. Leal.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Marie Leal, and I am the Director of Special Projects and Water Wastewater Engineering and Planning. As part of the City of Brownsville Street Improvement Project, CIP 490323, Brownsville Public Utilities Board engineering staff included needed utility improvements to the project design and construction contract for CIP number 2, which includes Portway Street, 11th through 12th Streets, Lourdes Boulevard, and Grande Boulevard. The BPB portion of the project will include the construction of approximately 2,000 linear feet of 8-inch diameter water lines, 1,600 linear feet of 8-inch and 10-inch wastewater lines, as well as fire hydrants, water and wastewater services, valves, manholes, appurtenances. Invitations to bids were advertised by the City of Brownsville on March 12th and March 19th, 2023, and were posted on the purchasing website. Bids were received by the City Purchasing Department on Thursday, April 20th, 2023 at 2 p.m. with 3 bidders responding as follows. G&T Paving with a utility adjustment bid of $502,609. RM Wallstorf Inc. with a bid of $760,385. Chlor Equipment LLC with a bid of $679,275. And we had an engineer's estimate for the utility portion at $451,615. BPB staff recommends approval to reimburse the City of Brownsville for the utility improvements for CIP 49-0323, reconstruction of street paving and drainage improvements for CIP number 2 for a total amount not to exceed $1,609.
Okay, pretty straightforward. Any comments or concerns or questions for Ms. Leal on this item?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Sampaio,
I'll second that.
second by Mr. Nahid. All those in favor to approve this item, say aye.
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 Those against? This motion passes. Thank you, Ms. You have the next one, Ms. Leal?
Thank you. I have the next one.
Okay.
I'll read the subject line.
Number 7, consideration and possible action to approve a memorandum of understanding between the City of Brownsville and Brownsville Public Utilities Board for the Owens Road Bridge Utility Adjustment Phase 1.
Again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the Owens Road Bridge is an existing bridge approximately 300 feet from the Boca Chica and Owens Road intersection that requires complete reconstruction. The Texas Department of Transportation FAR District is replacing the bridge due to its unsafe conditions. Brownsville Public Utilities Board is responsible for the cost associated with the relocation, pre-bridge construction, and also the replacement, which will happen post-bridge construction of all the utilities. BPB has a 12-inch diameter force main, an 8-inch diameter water line, a 10-inch diameter gravity main, sewer lines that are in conflict with the proposed bridge alignment and also the subsurface bridge pilings. A small lift station will also be necessary to maintain services to BPB customers in the area. Half Associates, selected from the Water Wastewater Department rotation list approved by the board on December 13, 2021, has provided plans and specifications for this project. On January 2023, TxDOT procured and awarded the Owens Road Bridge Construction Contract, CSJ 02106-306, Kenya Construction LLC, who at the request of BPB and TxDOT provided a change order cost to perform the Phase 1 pre-bridge construction utility relocations in the amount of $528,510. In order for this work to be carried out by the state procure contractor, the City of Brownsville will have to enter into a third-party change order agreement with TxDOT to pay for this utility work. BPB will in turn enter into a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with the City of Brownsville to reimburse the city for the utility costs associated with this project. Phase 2, which will happen after the bridge is constructed, those utility construction adjustments, that cost is estimated at 300,000, but has not been formally submitted yet and will come back to the board at the point that we're closer to the bridge construction starting. The recommended action, BPB staff recommends board approval of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Bronzeville and Bronzeville Public Utilities Board for the Owens Road Utility Adjustments Phase 1 for a total amount not to exceed $528,510.
All right, that's pretty straightforward, and the recommended action's already been read. Any discussions? Comments?
I only have one request. When you come back with the second phase, the post-construction cost proposals, please highlight the fact that you said you would bring this back to the board once they were submitted. You could even just copy and paste that line that mentions it. The last sentence, basically.
Will do.
Thank
That's
you.
easy.
That is
Noted,
super.
Mr. Webb.
And the city already signed off on that.
Oh, actually, I'm in conversations with the Public Works Director and City Engineering. I'm sure we're gonna have to go through City Commission. And once we go through City Commission, I'm at the point that they take it to City Commission, by then we'll have the simple MOU between PUB and the city. And after it goes through City Commission and it gets approved, then I believe the upper management, our executive management will authorize and sign up on it.
And it's standard practice that when TxDOT makes a correction or a reconstruction like this, that the city or the local utility covers all of the utility costs, correct?
That is correct, yes. Because we're all within I know it's an off-system bridge, but technically we would have been within the right-of-way, then we're responsible for the relocations of the utilities. And TxDOT will deal with another government entity. And so in this case, we're an arm of the city. They selected to do the MOU with the city.
Okay, so any other questions or concerns with the item? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Sampaio. And we have a second.
Second that.
Mr. Holman seconds that. And so all those in favor of approving this item, please say yay.
Aye.
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 Against? This item passes. Thank you, Mr. Leon.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll move on to the next one. Mike, you have this one?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So item number 8 is a presentation and possible action for federal legislative and consulting services lobbyists. So a BPUB board subcommittee evaluated submitted proposals for federal legislative and consulting services and selected HROT Inc., doing business as MMO Partners and Spencer Frame LLP to make presentations to the board. Each firm will be limited to a 10-minute presentation with an additional 5 minutes for questions and answers. Earlier before the meeting, we did draw names to determine the order of presentations. And so first presenter will be Spencer Frame, followed by MMO Partners. So at this point time, we will ask the other firm to step out, and we'll invite Spencer Frame to do their presentation.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Michael Warner, and I am the team lead for the Texas and federal practice, government affairs practice for Spencer Frame. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you today. Truth be told, I want to tell you a little bit about what we do at Spencer Frame at the federal level. I'm really more interested in answering your questions. So please feel free to interrupt me at any time with anything. Spencer Fane has 23 offices around the country. It's a law firm, as I'm sure you're aware. From a lobbying standpoint, we do things slightly different than a lot of K Street lobby firms in DC. We spend a majority of our in the districts maintaining relationships with members of Congress where they grew up. We actually get to know them on a personal level. Most of the clients we currently have at the federal level just simply want money from the federal government, right? And so we focus on members of House and Senate appropriations. And we have several members of the House in Texas. We have no one in Texas on Senate appropriations. So we go to our neighbor to the left. We have an excellent relationship with Martin Heinrich, who is on appropriations, the U.S. Senator from New Mexico. As a matter of fact, he visited our Dallas office, I think, 3 weeks ago to get to know some of our partners and some of our clients. We have Senator Hickenlooper out of Colorado, who is looking to, in the next Congress, to be on Senate appropriations, and we're having him to our Denver office. He's also former governor of Colorado. Our office next month. I won't bore you with the details. You know, we have nearly 500 attorneys, 23 offices. We just opened up 2 offices in California. We have a blueprint all over the place. What comes up every now and then is that we don't have a DC office, and that's on purpose. We don't have a DC office because I don't spend my time sitting in the office. Like I said, I spend most of my time, especially when Congress is in recess, like they are most of the summer, et cetera, visiting members in their districts and making my requests there. Especially from an appropriation standpoint, what ends up happening is the district people, the district staff becomes more important in interacting with members of Congress. We do have a commitment to diversity. We have 21 women attorneys roles, 28 women attorneys hired last year alone. Excuse me. We have 8 partners and eight other lawyers on our governmental affairs team. I run the federal practice out of Austin, as well as our state practice. We have 100% support of everyone, though, in every office. We have a former governor at our firm, former governor of Oklahoma. We have another couple of elected officials. I started working as a lobbyist at the ripe old age of 28 in August of 2000. Prior to that, I spent the 90s working in the Texas legislature, the United States Congress, the British Parliament, and the EU Parliament. You know, I decided that I wanted to leave government service and actually work with clients, because what I saw as a staff person was that there were a number of people who do what I do who actually servicing their clients well. They didn't know what they were talking about. And I figured somewhat arrogantly at 28 that I could do this just as well as they could, excuse me. And so 22 years, working on my own. And I joined Spencer Fane in June of 2022. Someone that works with me out of our Kansas office is Diane Menier. She worked at Kansas government for 15 years and does a lot of our Midwest interaction with members of Congress for me. This isn't working. Thank you. So like I said, we engage at all levels of government. We do not just House of Citizens. We do EPA, TCEQ. We have meetings with Mr. Reagan and Dr. Nance. Dr. Nance is the EPA administrator for Region 6 here in Texas. Also, just as a side note, working on the state level, we interact often with the governor's office as well as the commissioners at TCEQ. and as well as the PUC, but TCQ primarily. Recently, what do you look for out of a federal lobbyist? Most of the time, you're just looking for direct appropriations. We call them earmarks, or we used to call them earmarks, but that became a dirty word. And so now we call them community funding projects. Some of the projects that we've worked on in Texas, we're getting direct appropriations for the reserve at Mayfield. So these are affordable housing projects that were directly appropriated by Congress to the government entity partner you see here in front of you. I just put the Texas ones in because I thought that's what you would be interested in. A former client is the Port of Galveston. Spent a lot of time and a lot of effort getting them federal money for dredging. Even though Galveston puts aside money for dredging of their own, it's often not enough. So we would work with Congress to get them additional money for dredging. Infrastructure, you may have seen in the newspaper recently that they have signed deals with new cruise terminals, with new cruise ships to come in the new terminals. That's a direct result of the infrastructure dollars that we were able to get for them. I also represent at the state and federal level, Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas, same deal. All they really needed from the state and the Fed were an increase in their budget appropriations. And we were able to get that for them, and especially with some of their exceptional items. Why me? Well, what you really need is not just someone who can interact with members of Congress, especially on appropriations and finance, but someone who understands your actual needs. A little bit more about my background. I was chair of the Water and Wastewater Commission for the city of Austin for a number of years, for almost a decade. And I was a member of their Electric Utility Commission for 3 years. And so I actually have a unique set of understanding for exactly what it is that you need, why, and we can access the money in Congress for you. You look like you have a question, sir.
No, I don't. I would actually refer to the committee members on questions.
Well, the last thing I want to talk about is your RESCA program. That's actually, something like that is actually fairly near and dear to my heart. The way I read Administrator Reagan is, I used to work for the Environmental Defense Fund, and water and wastewater was my specialty there. And I met him when he was working there. And there were actually many talks had with those folks about restoring wetlands, et cetera. And so it makes me happy to think that I would have the opportunity to work on something like that. That's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So I don't have anything else, but I am open to questions.
I just have a comment, Mike. I mean, I appreciate the experience that you bring as a lobbyist. I mean, you had hands-on experience on committees up in Austin. I think as a board member, we're looking for a lobbyist that's communicating with our utility, that is visible, that is present at times, and is providing reports and providing us with opportunities.
I don't know how to do it any other way, Mr. Chairman, because I feel like I can't do my job if I don't talk to you. Right. And so if you're seeking a commitment to not just have communication, but be physically present, you have it from me. That is something that, so as my coworkers can tell you, I'm actually rarely in the office because I'm either meeting with members of Congress or meeting with clients.
I appreciate that. Appreciate those comments.
So I have a quick question, if you don't mind.
No, sir, I don't mind at all.
How often do you meet with the various other funding agencies outside of Congress? Often we will have to go to those to secure funding. And, in fact, last time I was in DC, we just, we met with the, it's been a long day. We met with a couple different federal agencies. And so do you sit there and talk with those folks as well, or is it just members of Congress?
So if you're talking about places like OMB, which I'm assuming that's who you're discussing or who you're mentioning, I met with them this summer on when the House and Senate was on recess for a client for something completely different. So I'm not sure who else you're referring to because the money has to be appropriated through Congress, but we actually have the ability to meet with almost anyone. And before I forget, I am absolutely open to having a representative from Brownsville accompany me to these meetings. My ego does not get in the way. Let's be clear, even though I know a lot about electricity and water and wastewater, I am not your expert on that issue. So I would welcome participation by anyone you guys designate to accompany me to any meeting at any time. So I hope that answers your question, sir.
Okay. Anything else, Dr. Holman?
I'm fine.
Well, if that's all, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate it. And I don't plan on going anywhere after we're done. So if you guys can think of any additional questions, I'll stick around. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, we'll bring in the other firm.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I want to congratulate you on this building. It's the first time I've been in this new building, even though we've worked for the utility for a while. So it's an impressive building and makes a good statement about the water utility. What I'd like to do to start is introduce my two colleagues who are with me, Dina Archuleta and Kyriakos Pagonis, and have them say a word about themselves and the firm of Vogel Group and MMO Partners.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kyriakos Pagonis. I've been with MMO Partners for about 20 years. The firm has been in business for over 40 years, primarily representing local utilities, cities, counties, water authorities, flood control agencies, primarily in the West and Southwest. If you're trying to do the math, that would make me about 10 when I started with the firm. So just clarifying that. But we're very proud of the fact that our clients, and John will go into this a little bit longer, the level of time that we've retained each client. And it's primarily, and we are called MMO Partners, primarily because of the partnerships between us and the client. So I will turn it back to you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. Thank you so much for having us today. I'll just do a quick overview of myself and a little bit of the firm. My name is Dina Archuleta. I am formerly a board member on the water utility in Albuquerque, Mexico, and commissioner, went on to work in the Obama administration, actually oversaw the Bureau of Reclamation in that tenure while I was there. And then now I work for the Vogel Group, which is a multi-client bipartisan firm focused with my practice primarily on energy, a lot of GHG, carbon sequestration, direct utility, municipal utility members as well. So with that, I'm going to pitch it back to John. We can go from there.
Thank you.
So in addressing the points that were laid out in the RFQ about providing representation for the utility, I look at 5 factors that are important in what I think is a successful and effective Washington representation. Experience, mission success, longevity with clients, partnerships that we help create for client with Congress and federal agencies, and then finding creative solutions. The 51 years of combined experience with the Vogel Group and MMO Partners, those years of experience have built a proficiency working on federal legislation, programs, rules, which benefit utilities and local governments. In terms of the federal advocacy that we work on with mission success, we estimate our work with local governments and utilities over the years that we've been in business probably accounts for $750 million for those clients. And we've also secured significant legislation in the water and energy area. We've worked on 10 water resources bill. That was the bill that your Wasaka's project was authorized in 2018. We've worked on significant fire and disaster legislation because our representation of the Santa Rosa, California, which you may remember a few years ago, had 3,000 homes burned down and lost a significant amount of life. We've also worked on the Coastal Protection Act, which was a bill that we got through Congress that benefited 7 coastal cities in the country. At that time, San Diego was our client, and what we were able to do is create a fund to help them build water supply, wastewater treatment programs, in addition to what EPA had authorized in the revolving loan funds. We're pretty proud of the fact that we've had clients for a long time. In fact, the first 4 clients that my original partner and myself represented are Phoenix, Albuquerque, Oklahoma City, and Oxnard, California. We've represented them for 42 years. To Mr. Jones's point, I was 10 years of age and had a newspaper route at the time before I'd started this work. But why have people retained us? Why have we kept clients? And it's because return on investment. And with the Brownsville Public Utility Board, we estimate that over the years that we've worked for you, we probably, for every dollar you've spent, or for every dollar you've spent on our contract, we've returned $16. And that's across authorizing legislation, appropriations, and grants. And I was happy to see the previous group that presented about the advanced metering, because one of the things that I would point to in terms of how effective we work is that when Dr. Holman and Ms. Gilbert were in Washington in February, we went to the Bureau of Reclamation and we talked about the Southmost Regional Authority and the fact that you want to increase the production there. But that conversation slipped in the fact that you had a $5 million Water Smart grant pending over there, which was awarded, I believe it was in September. So it's understanding the environment you're working in, and it's making the connections and bringing those things together in an effective way. So that's the partnership part I wanted to mention in my original factors. So what I want to have Ms. Archuleta mention is a few things that she's done with the Jackson Water Utility and Electric Utility.
Thank you, John. Just a couple of things just to very top, because there's so much going on both with the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill. As you know, there's a lot of money going in. So a lot of the things we've worked with them on is looking, both talking, getting grant money and working with the loan office to try to get new engagements around grid expansion, cybersecurity funding, and making sure that with transformers, because there's some new transformer regulatory and work coming up, and we want to make sure, because it's difficult to get transformers into the country based on regulatory restrictions now, because of the China restrictions, we want to make sure that there are other countries that the tax implications are not going to endanger that. So those are some of the things. In addition to that, we're working with them on EPA's 111 rule, which is a greenhouse gas rule that really focuses on limits of gas-fired combustion turbines, existing coal and oil gas-fired steam generation units, and certain gas-fired combustion turbines. So those are some of the things we're working on closely for that particular utility. And just if there's any questions, we can get into more detail as that goes. You bet.
John mentioned the city of Santa Rosa, and why is that pertinent here? They hired us actually almost 6 years ago to date after their devastating fires in 2017 to help them really navigate the FEMA process and reimbursement process through there. Their water system was devastated after the fire. There was massive contamination. There were a lot of regulatory issues, and FEMA was not used to dealing with an urban wildfire. So we had to do a lot of education. We worked with then Senator Kamala Harris, now Vice President Harris, to draft legislation that was ultimately included in that Disaster Recovery Act of 2018, which is major Stafford Act reform, which really governs the FEMA public assistance process and hazard mitigation process. So as a result of our work there, the city's request for reimbursement to repair their water system has been approved. Actually, I know it's crazy to think after about 6 years, they just got their final payment, but that is the process. But we were able to make sure that it happened. So I wanted to just flag that for you all. And I know you all are not immune to disasters in this area for sure. And I know that you all have been working hard to make sure that this system is resilient. And we look forward to working with you to make that more resilient.
So I want to mention, because we have the Public Utilities Board logo, we were very successful on two things. One, getting that Wasakas project designated as a new start by getting an earmark this last year. We wouldn't have gotten a new start if we waited for the administration to do it, because the administration has left that up to Congress now that earmarks have come back. I want to say, I know we are short on time, but I want to say we have a path with the Bureau of Reclamation, the Corps of Engineers, the Department of Energy, EPA, to work on funding that is in the infrastructure bill and funding that is provided by the Inflation Reduction Act. I can't get into the details now. I'm glad to answer, or my colleagues answer questions in the Q&A. I think we've exhausted our 10 minutes, so I want to be respectful of that. We'll stand for questions.
It's a time exhaustive. No, we want to thank you, of course, for your presentation tonight and for the long relationship that you've had with PUB. At this time, Ms. Gilbert, we're going to.
Yes, at this time, this would conclude the presentations. Unless there's no other questions, we would go deliberate and close and then announce after the meeting there'll be a ranking sheet that the procurement Mike will guide the board members on, as well as the ones that on there. That is correct.
I don't have any of the, I don't know if the mayor has any questions right now. No. Dr. Holman?
Yeah, so just a question, and so you kind of have talked a little bit about this, but can you tell me a little bit more about your work with the regulatory agencies, and with the, what was it, Bureau of Interior? And just how often do you meet with these folks versus how often do you meet with congressional members versus, everything else?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Holman. It's really on an as-need basis. If you have an issue, we make sure that as you come out to DC, we bring you in, because there's nothing better for the agency to hear your issues directly from you and make sure that you're hearing from committee staff that is within the Senate and the House of Representatives. So we also, along with your own representatives, it's great to have your representatives know, but having committee staff understand directly the implications of some of these rules, particularly the EPA rule that's coming out, to make sure they understand that and the implications of what's happening with transformers, for example. Those are things that we make sure that you're aware of, and make sure that there's also avenues for you to talk to them and discuss, and have your staff come out and discuss directly with them funding opportunities. because they don't always understand the needs that utilities have, especially municipal utilities. So to have that direct engagement is so important. And that's one of the things that we make sure happens. And I don't mean to take too much of our time, but I did want to say that, local group, which is a separate group from MMO, we partnered together on this because we think we both have something great to offer, both from the water side and the energy side.
Let me add to that. Let me add to that. The work that both of these firms will do for you isn't going to cost you one more dollar. We're partnering at the same amount of money that we've been earning from you folks for a long time with no increase. So it's not going to cost any more. Dr. Holman, I would say to you in terms of dealing with the regulators, one of the things that we were engaged with the Albuquerque Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority was the expansion and storage of native and surface water at Abiquiu Reservoir in northern New Mexico. It was a 7-year project. We drafted legislation. We tried to get it through. We had to deal with the bureaucracy of the Corps of Engineers, who were the permittancy. And finally, Kyriakis, and this is what I like about Washington and the way it works when it's working well. Kyriakis and I went to an event that he got us invited to, and the chairman of the House Transportation Committee was there, Peter DeFazio. And we took a minute to walk up to him and say, we have a piece of legislation. It has to do with Abiquiu Reservoir in New Mexico. He said, I'm familiar with it. I said, we need this in the next WRDA bill. We do not need the Corps of Engineers spending a lot of time figuring out how to do this. We know how to do it. Here's the legislation. It got in the bill. But the thing about dealing with the Corps or dealing with EPA, and we had to do this with EPA when Brownsville had $17 million that we had gotten through stimulus funding and appropriations, and a project we were working on wasn't going to go forward. We had to repurpose that money and deal with the Reg PA and with the administrator's office about how to switch that money back into a grant without Congress raising heck, because you were taking money that had been earmarked, some of the money earmarked for a specific purpose. They can't just change and let you do what you want with it. But we worked that through the regulatory process at EPA. So those are things that we've been capable of doing. We will continue to do for you folks.
Good. All right, nothing else. We're going to move this into the executive.
May I say one more thing? I want to, if you don't mind. Mr.
No,
Chairman,
no.
I want to thank the staff at this utility because the work that we've done in Washington has always been strongly supported by the work that they do before your CEO or your board members come to Washington. And it makes pressure from federal agencies. And that, believe it, and I think you would believe this, that makes an impression on people who make decisions about funding that affect them.
Stacy has a question.
Thank you.
Appreciate the comment. Okay. Marilyn, is Joseph saying?
You have Dr. Samora, who's going to be, with her hand is up.
Dr. Samora?
I hope to make this quick. So as you look back, just for MMO partners, to the service that you have provided BPOP over the last however many years, what are things that you, looking back, think that you could have done better?
We could have, thank you for the question. We could have always made agencies move faster or Congress get a funding quicker for us. I think what I do like about
You could have done that?
this also, I'd say, well, we could do that. Pardon me?
I'm sorry, so you could have done that? You personally could have done that?
No, I couldn't, but if I had that power. But I think what we always find out from every time we go through some exercise trying to get something for a client and we see something that we could do better, we do it the next time. And it's kind of the theory of do one more thing. Never stop thinking that you can't get something done better than the way you did it this last time. I'm not going to admit that I have failed.
Okay, so there's nothing that you can look back and tell us that you could have done better.
I think I've
Yeah.
done my best. Yes.
Okay, you were somebody who makes no mistakes. Good to know. Thank you.
I won't go that far.
All right, thank you. Dr. Samoda, the responses. At this time, how many items do we have for close? 5? Mr. Pequeño, mind to read these off? Okay, we have 5 items for consideration in closed meeting. Let me read them before we take a motion. Number 1, meeting with board legal counsel for advice about contemplated and pending court and administrative litigation and on matters in which the duty of the attorney under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct conflicts with chapter 551, section 551.071. Item 2, discussion and consultation with board counsel of any pending litigation against Brownsville Public Utility Board, section 551.071. Number 3, presentation, discussion, and possible recommendation of information upon pricing of purchase power generation fuel and their impact upon the fuel purchase energy and marketing charge, section 551.086. Number 4, discussion of action to select a vendor for federal legislative and consulting services, lobbyists, section 551.074 and section 551.071. Number 5, possible discussion with counsel on the Resaca Restoration Program, section 551.071. Do I have a motion to go into closed meeting? We have a motion by Mr. Sanbayo, a second.
I'll second.
By Mr. Nahida, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Yes. Motion passes. We are now going into closed meeting. All right. Are we ready, Norm? Lonnie, we're ready? 7:47, we are out of executive session and back into live, our live meeting. We have a consideration of possible action on item discussed in closed meeting, council.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, based on the ranking of the board, if it is the will of the board, a motion would be required to approve MMO Partners and Vogel Group to provide federal legislative and consulting services to BPUB and authorize the general manager to negotiate and execute a contract.
Okay, do we have a motion on that? We have a motion.
I'll second
by-
that.
Good. Second by Dr. Holman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay. This motion passes. Administration will be moving forward on this item. There are no other items from closed meeting, discussion and or request for future agenda items. Anything from any of the board members? Okay. This time I'll entertain motion for adjournment of this meeting.
Just real
We have a
quick before,
Motion to adjourn.
just
Second
real, sorry, before we adjourn, just for the minutes, just to note that at 7:02, Dr. David Zamora exited the meeting.
All right, for some other left, time.
It's 7:02.
Okay, we have that noted and documented, and we have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Sampaio and second by Mr. Nahida. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those who want to keep this meeting going? No. All those against?
No.
This motion, this meeting is adjourned.
Talk to y'all later. Bye.
I thought Joseph wanted to keep it going.